As you come in, could you please make sure you sign in with the appropriate town clerk? We have Lebanon over here, Berwick's in the middle, and North Berwick's on that side of the auditorium. Please make sure you sign in with the town clerks. Okay, good evening and welcome. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I want to welcome you to our district budget meeting. Tonight, you will determine the budget for the 2012-2013 school year, and that budget will then go out to a referendum vote next Tuesday, the 22nd, in all 3 towns. The budget that you'll work on tonight is a result of a lot of hard work and thought on the part of our board. We do know that it's a tough economy, and we do know it's a significant increase, but be assured that the board worked really hard in coming in with a budget that was the lowest possible and still being educationally sound. And we actually have a flyer that was out by the entrances that shows our per pupil costs, and we are and continue to be pretty low in York County, so I think the board is doing a really good job. Having said that, I would now like to entertain a motion for a moderator for our meeting. There's a motion and a second for Mr. Bourbon as a moderator of our meeting. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Hearing no other nominations, would you all like to signify yay or nay? Yay for the election of Mr. Bourbon? It carries. Bill, you're up. Would you please swear in Mr. Bourbon? Those of you who have just arrived, would you please make sure you check in with the town clerk for your town at the front of the auditorium? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Bourbon, and I'm going to be the moderator for this evening's meeting. Before we get underway, there are a few little housekeeping chores that I'd like to get out of the way so that everybody is on the same page as we work through the meeting. Assistant Superintendent Sue Austin will be the district clerk and recorder. So she will get the information from the ballot clerks from the 3 towns. She will do the math, whatever it requires, and she'll keep track of that. Sue will procure the number of eligible voters in attendance from each town ballot clerk and tabulate. It takes 10%, a total 10% to require a written ballot on any of these articles, and we'll do them individually. And I'm going to require a 50% for a written ballot on an amendment. A close vote, the moderator cannot determine the outcome. Ballot clerks from each town will count and report the results to Sue. Sue will tabulate and give the results to the moderator. And I'm going to ask someone to make this motion. I move that we adopt the Maine Moderator's Manual 2005 edition to guide the moderator in the conduct of this meeting, so that we will have that on record. That will be the guidelines for the rules that we'll use. So moved. We might as well do it right now. So moved. Do we have a second? Second. Discussion? If not, please, those in favor, please signify. Opposed? Those will be the rules that we'll use this evening. All articles must have a dollar amount passed by the meeting before moving on to the next article. So we just couldn't vote an article down and move on. We'd have to start again. That's a little different than the town meetings. Moving the article, please move school board's recommendation. And we'd have a second on that, but there are some articles on the warrant that would be moved as written, and we'll deal with that as we come upon them. These, the amendments can be offered in a positive or negative fashion. When you vote, please show the cards. All questions and comments will be made through the moderator. We'll only deal with one amendment at a time. We'll take care of that amendment, and if there are others, we will deal with them one at a time. Moving the question, it stops discussion, requires a second and 2/3 vote of the people present. So that's normally a procedure that comes up in a meeting like this. Please use the mics when you rise to speak, And we have two mic runners, Crystal Ford over here, and Mike Conroy over here. Articles must be moved and seconded before discussion. And if someone was to challenge the moderator on his counting of the votes, it takes 7 voters. 7 voters may challenge the moderator's determination of the vote. And hopefully, one of the cornerstones of our meeting will be civility, so that we can conduct our meeting in a dignified way and move forward. Now, I have the warrant, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the warrant before we actually start. The first 11 articles are dealing with cost center categories, and there are 11 of them. And we'll deal with them one at a time. And these articles can be amended up or down, but we must have a dollar amount before we move to the next one. Article 12 is kind of a combination state-local, and there's a total of $31,161,872. And what the state is saying is, we want you to raise $12,919,200, and if you do that, we will give you $18,242,672. So that's, in the old days, we used to call it the foundation allocation. I'm sure that there is a more modern name for it today. Article 13 is just an article dealing with debt service, no state participation, pretty much dealing with this school, this room that we're in right now, and that was voted by the voters, and it's all local money, so that has to be raised in an article. Article 14 is an article that raises additional funds to support this budget. And we will move the article, we will second the article, we will open the article for discussion, and as we work through the discussion, when it's finished, then we will shut the meeting down and go to a written ballot. So the town clerks will ask you to line up, get your ballot, you do your written vote, they will tabulate the vote, give the tabulation to Sue, and we will know the results of the vote. Article 15 just summarizes everything that has been passed up to this point. So if everything passed, we would be dealing with the amount of money that's issued there on Article 15. Article 16 is just kind of a house cleaning type of article where it gives the board the authority to expend other funds that may come in to the district, unanticipated. And Article 17 is the article that supports adult education, the adult education program that's offered here in the district. Excuse me? Article 17 is adult education. This is what I have in my warrant. Article 16 is In any event, this is the official warrant. So Article 16 is the okay to spend additional monies that come into the district, and Article 17 is the adult education article. And I'll read this before we move and second it. Okay. So we're ready to begin. Article 1, to see what sum the district will authorize to expend for regular instruction. School board recommends $14,077,925. Open for discussion. Pam? Wait a minute. Please use the mic.
I have a clarifying question for an interest of mine of a small program called Blast Off, and I'm not sure whether it's under regular ed or special ed. And I didn't know if Paul or Sue could answer that for me. Special ed? Okay. So I'll wait.
Further questions? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? Article passes. Article 2, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for special education. School board recommends $5,635,272. Open for discussion.
Now it's Pam's turn.
I wanted to speak on behalf of our youngest students coming into school. For the past 3 or 4 years, a group of very dedicated therapists in our district have put together a program called Blast Off that has served children that are coming into our kindergarten in the summer previous to the fall. And they've served students that we've screened and have shown that they just need a little bit of extra help in whether it's fine motor, their gross motor, or their speech and language skills. And it's been very successful. In fact, we've piloted in Lebanon for probably 2 or 3 years, and it was so successful and had wonderful results for the children and the classroom in the fall that it was expanded to the other 2 towns last summer. And I know that there's budget constraints, and we're looking for money wherever we can find it. But this year, the program has been cut back to serving only 15 of our neediest students in the district. And I can only speak, I'm a classroom teacher in Lebanon in kindergarten, and I live in North Berwick, of the effect that the program has had. We have children that are coming into our kindergarten classrooms now that if they had come in without this program, many of them we've watched in the past struggle their whole year in kindergarten. And the more and more academic we become, whether we agree with that or not, that's kind of the reality of what's happening, it becomes harder and harder to meet those needs of those children that are not able to hold a pencil, are not able to cut, have not sat and listened to stories, and that they start their career either feeling not successful or feeling very frustrated. And for the amount of money that that program costs and the benefit that I feel that it has for the children, not just in kindergarten, but all the way through, that they start their career with us feeling successful, and it's so much easier to build on success than it is to try to turn around failure and frustration. I just would really like us to reconsider cutting that program back by 2/3, which is pretty much my understanding of what's going to happen. I don't have a monetary amount. I don't know that part of it. I do know the effect that it's had. Thank you.
I'll pass that to Paul.
Well, actually, our special ed director's in the audience. Jeanette, you want to take that?
It is a very valuable program, and I appreciate that we get such support from our regular education. It was strictly a budgetary cut. We did cut it by, down to $5,000 was the amount that we have budgeted that program for, thinking that we would reduce by, we would reduce 2/3 of it. So if we wanted to add back in, I would recommend we budget at least $12,000 to add those 2 additional sections back in.
Total 12,000?
A total of $12,000 rather than $5,000 that we budgeted for. So
So you'd be adding 7.
we would be using the same staff we have used and paying them what we've paid in the past.
No, but if you're saying it's a total of 12, then it's an addition of 7,000.
Yes,
is what
I think,
you're saying.
yes.
Further discussion?
I would just like to back up what Pam has said. As a former kindergarten teacher, has been a program that has been so successful. These children who had formerly come in crying because they had never seen scissors or pencils or crayons have come to school with such success, and they look at a task that's given them and say, I can do this, instead of saying, I don't know how to do this, and crying because most of the other children are. I think for the sum of $12,000 more, we would benefit so many more children, and I hope you will consider voting this in.
Further discussion? Right over here.
Thank you. I'm Linda Marks, and I am one of the people who wrote this program, so I think I might be able to answer any questions specifically about the program that you might have. But one thing that I would like to say is that this program really does benefit. We have in the past taken 15 children from each town. We work on social pragmatics, which is how to get along. We have worked on significant behavioral problems that would have entered kindergarten on the first day of school with no social understanding whatsoever of how to be in a classroom. We work on a phonological awareness program based out of speech and language. And this year we would actually rotate the program to add a special education teacher who would be dealing with more of the basic concepts as well. So we're going to look at adding another piece into that program to try to meet kindergarten needs more. Whatever we get for the program, that's what we will work with. We will take the 15 neediest or the 45 neediest. We will do our best. The biggest problem with only having the 15 is where we're going to locate this program. The Lebanon families, when they have to move out of Lebanon to get to the high school for this program, gas is expensive. Some of those Lebanon residents live very, very far away, and to ask them to transport to the high school is they're not going to do it. So at the very least, I'd like to see a program at the high school and a program in Lebanon, just so that we can meet all the town's needs location-wise.
Further discussion?
Hi, I'm Alita Baker, and I've taught high school for 38 years. And if you want to talk about dropout prevention at the high school level, this is where it starts.
We're still in discussion on this article. Yes?
So just for clarification, if you add the program back in, or add some of the components back in for the program to run and have a program in Lebanon and at the high school, are you talking about adding $7,000 to get to the $12,000, or are you adding a reduced number to get that program in Lebanon and in at the high school?
Ma'am, please go through the moderator. Okay, we're going to direct that question to the special ed director. Yes, ma'am?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It would be an addition of a total of 12,000, so an addition of 7,000 would be the additional cost that would allow us to have the program affecting all 3 towns. So 3 separate programs accepting 15 of our neediest children in each of the towns.
Further discussion? Well, I'm going to be calling for a vote because I don't, Mark?
I'd like to propose an amendment of adding $7,000 on for this program.
Do we have a second to the amendment? Second. It's been moved and seconded. We're in discussion of the amendment for $7,000 in additional revenue. Further discussion on the amendment? If there's no further discussion on the amendment, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The amendment passes. Now we're in discussion on the amended article. Do we have a, Mr. Briggs?
Yeah, I'd like to clarification on the increase, fairly significant increase this year in the tuition budget from $850 to $1,075,000.
Paul?
Carrie, that's because we actually have more kids placed out of district this year due to the severity of their needs. And in fact, right now we're running in a deficit in tuition because those kids are actually not fictional, they're already in placements.
Further discussion on the amended article? Lydia?
I was just wondering how many kids that affects.
Paul?
How many kids are in that program?
We have 23.
Further discussion? If up here?
This is actually the first time that I've paid attention to these budgets now that I have kids in school, and I just have a quick question how professional salaries increased $400,000 yet the
Ma'am, please stay on the article. We're talking about the amended article that we have on the floor right now.
Then never mind.
All right, thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call for the vote on the amended article. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The amended article passes. You got that, Sue? The amended.
Bill, I think her question was on the professional salary lines in special ed. So,
Well, we weren't talking about that function. We were talking about an item that maybe was attached to it.
okay.
Article 3, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for career and technical education. School board recommends $196,715. Open for discussion. Yes, ma'am?
I was just wondering, in the childcare ed tech, are they hiring new ed techs for it to go up $13,000? Is
No.
that for a new position?
In this current year, that number represents half of their salary because we paid the other half out of federal local entitlement dollars, which we can't do for next year. So it's the same person. This year it's a half a salary, next year it's their full salary.
Further discussion?
Bill, I just want to point out, you just blew it. This woman over here had a legitimate question on Article 2. You turned her down. It was very relevant to what we were talking about before we voted. And I think you missed it. You missed the point.
Well, you certainly entitled your opinion, but we were talking about a specific program that is attached to the special ed function. We already voted on the special ed function in a previous article. Yeah. The article was passed.
Well, to pass it, but to answer the young lady's question, The reason that line changed significantly is in the current budget, we are paying a fair amount of our special ed teachers out of federal local entitlement dollars, which are outside the budget. And what we decided to do, because there's a 20% penalty that we pay for professional staff, because we have to make up a piece of the Maine State retirement piece, is what we decided to do is we moved the teaching staff back into the budget, which is why that line goes up so much. And we moved a lot of our ed techs. And if you look down about 5 lines, the ed tech line goes down significantly because a lot of our ed techs are FICA and Social Security, so we don't pay that penalty. It was actually a way to maximize our federal dollars.
Further discussion on Article 3? I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? Article passes. Article 4, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for other instruction. School board recommends $800,536. Open for discussion. Yes, ma'am?
In the dues for expenses for the athletic director, it's jumping $2,000. Is there a reason for this?
Paul?
The board last year, in lieu of significant salary increases for some of the administrators, increased their expenses.
Okay. And what is retirement PLD? I see that in all the different sections that we'll be voting on this evening, and I've never seen that before.
Okay. What that is we have some categories of employees, drivers, custodians, and so forth, who are eligible both for FICA and for Maine State retirement. Mm-hmm. And so it's called a participating local district. And so there's a piece that the district would kick in district-wide. It's about $15,000. What happened is, in the past, we actually had a balance with Maine State retirement, and it was the balance that paid that fee. And last year, the board elected to collect that money from Maine State retirement and use that to offset some of the increases in the current budget. And by doing that, we now need to make that $15,000 payment, which we didn't before. So those amounts spread through each function represents our contribution towards the PLD.
Okay, and the activity accounts is going down $10,000. Is that because we're getting rid of freshman sports stuff?
Yeah, the board cut first teams.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 5, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for student and staff support. School board recommends $2,754,378. Open for discussion. Ma'am?
Does this include ed tech positions, or was that in regular, what we passed already? Where it says for the, like social worker and stuff. There is a program at the middle school that is called the Grade Improvement Program.
Right.
Is that, go ahead.
That would have been under regular instruction.
Okay, I didn't get that, because that is an awesome program. And
We have a number of ed tech positions, and depending on what work they do, they're in different budget functions. The program you're alluding to was in regular instruction. We have ed techs in special education, so there's a line for them there. And there are ed techs in this function who either work in the libraries or work in the computer labs.
Okay, but will this program be null and void now, the grade improvement program?
The board did cut it, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Sorry.
I have two questions about this. As social workers dropped, I just want to know about that. And then the other one is, are we decreasing the ed tech salaries? Is that why that number is lower?
Paul?
Okay, in answer to the first question, what we essentially did, because the social worker that was in this category is devoting more and more of their time to special education. So the position still exists. We moved it to the special education function, which is one of the reasons special education increased, because it seemed more appropriate. That's what they're really doing. And your second question was?
Well, technology ed tech salaries, I'm wondering if we're dropping technology ed techs, or how come that's?
We cut a ed tech position basically at the Knowlton School. With the grade shifting that is going on, what we really needed at the Knowlton School was a half library position and a half computer position, and we combined them, and we're going to have one person do both of those functions.
Okay, that makes sense. And then can you just explain to me the state laptops? I was under the impression that they funded that wasn't something that we necessarily as voters took care of.
Okay, that's a two-part question. All right, the laptop program at the middle school, which most people are familiar with, is totally controlled and run by the state, so there's no costs in our budget. They simply provide us the machines. What happens with the high school program is part of our state aid, the $18 million that Bill alluded to earlier, is earmarked for technology. And the board elected to use those technology dollars that we're getting to support the lease purchase of the 1,000 so laptops that we have at the high school. But because it's not a direct state program, we show the revenue that we're getting, but then we have to show the expense that we're paying for those. So it is state supported, but we need to show it.
Further discussion? This gentleman right here.
Yes, I have two questions. Under the nurses' salaries, how many nurses do we have? And why the big increase?
Okay. The increase is basically, in this current year, we carried a new part-time nurse position, which is about 5 lines down, and we moved that up to this line because it's no longer a new position. So that's a large part of the increase. What we have is a nurse in Lebanon, a nurse who covers those 2 schools, a nurse in North Berwick who covers those 2 schools, a nurse at the Knowlton School, a nurse at the Hussey School, a nurse at the middle school, and currently we have 1.5 nurses at the high school. This budget would increase it to 2 full-time nurses. So what does that make, 6?
Okay, also, under FICA and Medicare, why the big increase? From, what is it, 7,154 passed, now it's up to 25,000, 24,000?
Denise, you want to take that? Oh, partly it's there twice because we have a FICA and a Medicaid line for the library function and then the health function and then the technology function. So those lines are associated to the staff in those different departments. And I think it's a combination of some increases in our, one, we probably under budgeted somewhat this year, but 2, we pay a Medicare amount, it's 1.45 for every new staff person. And as we have staff who leave us, who were exempt, like myself, their replacements we wind up having to pay Medicare on, so it goes up slightly every year.
Is that pretty much it? Further discussion? Right over here.
Is the health center at the high school used so much where we do need two full-time nurses?
Well, the board heard a lot of evidence and tracked the number of visits that we have at the health center and felt that it was warranted.
Right over here.
Yes, I was under the impression that the high school nurses program was funded by, what, York Hospital?
Paul?
Could you restate that?
I was under the impression that the nurses, the clinic that you have at the high school was based by York Hospital.
True. We have a nurse practitioner who actually came from York Hospital, but now it's from Berwick?
No, it's still, yeah, Berwick.
Right. So we're talking about school nurses, which are in the budget, and then there's a nurse practitioner part-time that is in addition to the nurses that we were talking about.
So then is the district paying for the nurse practitioner?
No, it's grant funded.
And back to the question that the gentleman had about FICA going up from 7,000 to 25,000? It's increasing by, what, 65%, and yet you're not really sure where?
I mean, it's strictly a function of salaries, and it's entirely possible that we either under budget before, or if we move more positions in here, that would have increased it. And Denise is going to check it.
We'll come back to your issue just a minute, ma'am, while she's looking up. We'll take another question or comment.
She could just say.
I will, I should. The librarians, how many full-time librarians are in MSAD 60?
One.
Okay, because it says salaries, it says librarian salaries. So that just led me to believe there was more than one. And that is the person that works at central office?
No.
Or does she have a library? Is she in a library? Or?
It's a gentleman. He works out of the high school library. We used to have 3, but we've cut it to 1 K-12 librarian, and then we have library
techs that run
ed
the rest
techs
of
who
them.
run the libraries.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Do we have the answer? Oh, all right, that's all right. Any other discussion before we get the answer?
No pressure.
This gentleman right here.
I'd just like an explanation on the nurse liaison sustainability stipends.
Paul?
We have, basically it's a department head for the nurses. At the high school we call them subject area coordinators, who is the liaison to the administrative team for all health and nursing related issues. What we found is, as we have more medically fragile kids and more kids with significant needs, that we needed a better coordination of our health program.
Is that a new full-time position, or is?
No, it's basically a stipend to one of the nurses.
Further discussion?
It's just technology.
And ma'am, the lady with the white T-shirt, right there, you know, and on further reflection, Carrie was probably right. And I apologize for cutting you off. I was, one of my senior moments it must have been. And I apologize. And thank you, Carrie, for calling that to our attention.
Well, Denise has rechecked the numbers, and they are a function of salaries, so the number is correct, and possibly we under budgeted last year, or we had someone out in some other function that we brought back in. But
This right here, yes, ma'am. We had a mic.
Could you just clarify the difference on the equipment leases, where 2011-12 it was $16,508, and the upcoming year it is $60,681?
Paul?
because we had a line for new leases that we entered into this year that we would have brought up into that one because we keep rolling them over. So if you look down below, there was a $25,000 amount this year that we would have moved up. And that's added to what was on the existing line. We also refinanced all our leases to get a better rate. And the way they packaged them up, we've been dividing them somewhat differently. So it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison.
And this lady right here?
The line for substitutes, it was 0 this year and it's 7,500 next year. Is that a part-time position or for nurses that are out? Is that under the nursing or is that under elementary?
Well, two things. One, we've never had a line for that, and we've just absorbed the costs for a sub for the nurse, for a nurse when we can get them. Under regular instruction, which is where we mainly budget subs, it was thought, one, for clarity, and two, because we were going over in the sub line, that we would have its own separate line. We also increased the stipend for nurse substitutes because we have such difficulty getting them.
Further discussion?
Is the library in Lebanon not going to be open for the summer? It just says it's going to 0, so are we not going to house or have a teacher there or a librarian there?
No, the library cost for Lebanon is actually in a different function. It's all other expenditures. It's the last function you'll look at.
Okay.
Do we have anything further to say to the lady that had the questions?
No, we think we answered. It is what it is.
Yeah, the actual was 18 this current year.
Yeah, so we were under.
So are we all set on that?
I think so.
You have your answer, ma'am. Any further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Oop, we have one here.
I think it might be back in relation to the equipment, but the copier lease and usage and the paper, how come that went from 0 to so much? Is that just changed from a different area or something?
Yes. We moved it from, if you look actually up above, last year they were in other instruction, but based on direction from the state, they feel it's more appropriately in this function because it's staff and student support.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 6, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for system administration. School board recommends $892,402. Open for discussion. Ma'am?
Is this, this is central office, am I correct?
Yes.
And under, what does TSA stand for?
It's a tax sheltered annuity.
We couldn't hear you.
It's a tax sheltered annuity.
Okay. And have you thought about either combining positions there and making some severe cuts at central office so that our kids in the schools don't have to lose programs?
Well, the board had a long discussion about just how did they want to structure the central office. But they essentially kept, at least until the new superintendent is on board with the existing structure.
Because?
I don't know, Peg, do you want to?
Is it on? Thank you. We have made that decision in the current tense, and that may change, but in the shape of where we're at right now, searching for a superintendent, we are rather low on system administration, and I know people don't want to hear that, and it doesn't necessarily look that way from the outside, but if you look at us next to other districts, we are. And so when we're doing a search for candidates, it's been a little slim. So cutting support here right now, going out and looking for candidates has not made life potentially any easier on ourselves. We may find that when we get a candidate in here that we can have those conversations and make changes, but right now that was a difficult place to
So
put
everyone
ourselves.
is being utilized to their full potential?
We absolutely support that, yes, that people are.
You ever go up there?
Pardon me?
Have you ever been up there during the day?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Because every time I've called, it goes right to a voicemail, and you never get a real person. The only person that ever answers the phone at central office is number 5, Karen Ward. She's the only one that answers the telephone up there, and Ellen Pennell when she's at her desk. It's really quite frustrating, and and the few times I've been up there, it was less than stellar, so.
Further discussion? This gentleman right here.
So that would sound to me like we are understaffed at the central office if we can't answer the phone. So I'm not sure I agree with the assessment that people are not being utilized to their fullness, because I think that was the implication. So I think you have a different problem.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 7, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for school administration. School board recommends $1,651,580. Open for discussion. Mark?
I was wondering about the administrative salaries, the major jump of approximately $90,000.
Paul?
It's a two-part answer, Mark. If you look basically 2 lines down, there's a $34,000 item for a half-time assistant principal for Hussey. One, we move that up to that line. That's a piece of it. And with the district restructuring, what we're doing is we're going to have a principal and an assistant principal cover both the Hussey School and the Knowlton School. And that half-time assistant principal, the other half of their salary right now is currently in regular instruction because it's a teacher, but where it's going to become a full-time assistant, given the 2 buildings, it's not really a change in salary, but it all winds up in this function. So that accounts for $65,000 of the increase.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Up and back here, this gentleman.
How many administrative people are there under the administrative salaries, and how many clerical people are getting clerical salaries.
Paul?
Give me 10 seconds. There's 12 administrative positions and 11.5 clerical. There's 12 administrative positions. Well, actually, it's 11.5 because there's still a half-time in Lebanon, and there's 11.5 clerical positions.
Further discussion? Ma'am?
Under the travel and expenses, a $21,000 increase.
Paul?
Well, as I mentioned before, there was an increase in the expenses for the administrators in the last go-around.
That's it? What does that mean?
Well, they each got about $2,000 in expenses, and there's 11.5 of them.
Further discussion? This lady right up here. Here comes the mic behind you.
Can you please explain exactly what the travel expenses are used for?
Paul?
Well, it's attendance at conferences, it's accommodations if they're going to a conference. It's basically a variety of things. It's basically around professional development.
Further discussion? This lady right here.
Was the line item for Connect Ed in a different space? Because it went from 0 and now it's up to $11,000? Or was it covered by something else and now we've got to cover it?
And could you repeat the question?
Connect Ed?
Oh, that's our district calling system, and it was previously under operation and maintenance. But where it serves basically an administrative function, we moved it here.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the, right here.
As far as the travel, again, there is a potential that that will not be used, then it will be put back into the budget, or does it just automatically go to the administration if it's not used?
Well, they have to submit receipts, so it's basically paid off of what receipts they submit. So it depends on how much they use.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 8. To see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for transportation and buses. School board recommends $2,471,036. Open for discussion. Mark, we have a mic?
You might as well stay down here. Vehicle lease and purchases. I know we were low on number of buses. Is that where it's happening this year?
Paul?
What, the increase?
Definitely.
Yeah, we got 6 new buses this year. We got 3 initially, and then we had the opportunity to get 3 more and get state subsidy on that. So the board used some stimulus dollars to get 3 more. So that's why we're not asking for any buses this year, because we got 6, well, no buses next year because we got 6 this year.
Okay, so these buses that we're seeing the increase are the ones you've already got them on, or you're getting?
Yes.
And that is basically covered by the stimulus. It's just a procedure to have them in here?
Well, we use the stimulus to make the first payment on them, and now we need to carry it on, but now we're getting state subsidy on them.
Okay.
Further discussion? This lady right up here in the back.
I was just wondering, it talks about reducing the activity buses. How much more are they being reduced?
Paul?
We currently run 4 days a week, and we're going to 2 days a week next year.
So in other words, after school activities, these kids really aren't going to be able to be involved because they probably won't have transportation home?
Well, a lot of the kids, especially the high school, drive themselves, and some of the others, like intramurals, we're planning to schedule around what will be the existing bus schedule.
Well, I think there's a lot of high school kids that probably don't drive.
You know, I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you, but you know, when the board is looking at where to cut, that was one of the things they looked at.
Mrs. Beckwith?
My question involves the bus drivers' salaries. It looks like for next year they're almost double. And I know one of the key points that was brought up when we were talking about restructuring the district is how many of the elementary school children are actually parent transported. So I'm curious about why that salary has doubled.
Okay, the basic answer is in this current budget, to get it down, we actually pulled out $565,000 in driver salaries because we're using the last of the federal stimulus dollars that we have. So the number this year is somewhat artificially low because we're using $565,000 in federal dollars. Those dollars go away for next year, so basically the full salary of the drivers is back in the budget. We actually don't really change any of the runs.
This, ma'am, are you still interested in, right here?
With the bus driver salaries, are the bus drivers getting an increase this year?
Depending on where they are in the scale, yes. We're in the middle of a 3-year contract for drivers. And I think it's on the order of 2.5%.
Now, are most of the bus drivers still considered part-time? Or part-time bus drivers, part-time custodians?
We have a few part-time drivers and custodians. We probably have 5 of those. Most of our drivers are just straight driving.
But part-time?
It's a combination. Some get 40 hours, some are around 20.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? This lady right up toward the back.
Does this cost for the buses include sports, athletics, or anything?
Paul?
No, there's actually a line for transportation costs, which is under other instruction and extracurricular. And so the cost for transporting sports teams is actually in that function.
Further discussion? Not, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 9. See what sum the district will be authorized to expend for facilities maintenance. School board recommends $3,921,290. Open for discussion. Mark?
Okay, we've got maintenance staff jumping up significantly of approximately $70,000. Can we explain that?
Paul?
Yeah, Mark, if you look on the custodial line, that's actually down. And we've got a couple of people who more appropriately we use district-wide as maintenance staff as opposed to custodians in the building. So we shifted them to the maintenance line.
Okay, now I have one more question. As to garage facility space lease, $105,000.
Paul?
Yeah, this is actually the last payment on the bus garage. We took it out of this year's budget because we used stimulus dollars to pay for it in an effort to get this budget down. And since we won't have any stimulus dollars next year, we put it back in the budget. It's actually the last payment.
It's the last payment, okay.
Further discussion? Over here?
The Hussey School modular classroom, I thought that was going away with all the things that are being switched around in classrooms, and the jump is $8,000 or $9,000.
Okay. We actually had a conversation about getting rid of what the Hussey staff affectionately calls the cottage. But when the board looked at it and we looked at the enrollment projections for Berwick, which are an increase of 24%, by moving the 4th grade to the Knowlton School, that's 5 teachers, so that saves 5 classrooms. This budget has an additional kindergarten teacher and a 3rd grade teacher for Hussey to deal with the enrollment increase. So we automatically start filling up the space that having the 4th grade leave provides. And just based on the growth pattern for Berwick, it would seem that within a year we'll probably continue to be adding staff there. And the cost to take down and move a modular and then have it come back is fairly significant. So the board felt it just made more sense to keep it because we're probably going to need it in a year, if not next year.
But why the significant jump in cost?
Okay, because it's more of a bookkeeping issue. The cost of the modular is about $18,000, but we get state support to the tune of about $13,000. So this year we budgeted just the difference. And the thought this year was to budget the whole amount and then show the additional $13,000 in state aid as a revenue. It basically comes out the same.
Thank you.
Further discussion? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 10, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for debt service and other commitments. School board recommends $2,294,014. Open for discussion. I'm going to call for the vote. Those in, oops, sorry. Ma'am, you got a mic right behind you.
Yes, could you elaborate exactly what that is?
Paul?
What was the question?
Could you explain exactly what that is?
The debt service?
Yes.
That's basically the mortgage payment on Noble High School.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 11, to see what sum the district will be authorized to expend for all other expenditures, including school lunch. School board recommends $130,455. Open for discussion. Mark?
Yes, we've gone from 0 to 80,000 under food service. What is the consideration there?
Paul?
Well, it's actually rather difficult to run a food service program that breaks even. Most districts have to supplement them to some degree. We've been fortunate that for the last 2 years, we haven't had to. They've broken even. They actually had a balance that we've used up, and the board kept prices the same for the last 2 years. So we basically run as efficiently as we can, but we've expended our balance. They're starting to run in a deficit, and we need to supplement their budget again.
Thank you.
I think, did we have another question or on this side? Okay. Further discussion? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 12. To see what sum the district will appropriate for a total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, and to see what sum the district will raise and assess as each municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act in accordance with the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20-A, Section 15688. Recommended amount set forth below. Total appropriated by municipality. Town of Berwick, $13,162,775. Town of Lebanon, $10,978,327. Town of North Berwick, $7,020,770. School district total appropriated sum of the above, $31,161,872. Total raised and district assessments by municipality. Town of Berwick, $5,028,153. Town of Lebanon, $4,134,144. Town of North Berwick, $3,756,903. Sum of the above, $12,919,200. Explanation. The district's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act is the amount of money determined by the state law to be the minimum amount that the district must raise and assess in order to receive the full amount of state dollars. Open for discussion. This lady right here.
I think this is a blonde question, but what does appropriated and raised, like, I don't understand the difference, and does raised mean we're asking for that much more from these towns? Can you just explain that for me?
Paul?
I thought that was a good question for you.
Well, yeah.
You're the expert.
I don't think he's going to answer, though. I think it's
Well, I'll take a stab at it, and Paul can correct me if I'm wrong. When they work out the formula, they look at the state evaluation for the appropriate town and all those types of indicators, and they come up with a figure for that town, and that's appropriated. And they do it for all three towns, so the total amount is the 31 million. And then when we plug in the formula that the state uses, 50% that the locals uses, 50% pupil, 50% evaluation, you come up with a percentage for each town. So when you say raise, that means taxes in those towns. So on the right-hand column, the money that you see for Berwick is that's what they have to raise for taxes. And then you see Lebanon, that's what they have to raise for taxes in North Berwick. So it totals up to $12,919,200. That is the local share and must be raised to get the $18,242,672. And where that figure comes from, if you subtract the $12,919,200 from the 31, you come up with what the state's contribution is. Yeah, right. All right, further discussion. Tony?
Do the numbers in the left-hand column reflect the or the $7,000 additional money that we decided to raise as a group here tonight?
Paul?
No, it wouldn't. What you would do, because the amendment that you made doesn't have any relationship to what the state says we need to raise, you would need to add the $7,000 to Article 14, because it'd be straight local money.
So that wouldn't have any effect on what we're voting for in terms of numbers here in these columns?
Not on 12.
Okay.
What would need to change to be consistent is Article 14, and then the Article 15, which is a total of the budget, would need to change.
Further discussion? Pat? Right over there.
Thank you. You said earlier that this is where we combine things and vote on the totals in general, right? Pretty much, kind of? Is that what we're doing? Because I have a general question, and would that be the time to ask it?
Are you referring to the summary article, Pat? Like that's a summary of everything that's been passed? This basically, this amount of money, 31 million, the state's saying that is the amount, and that the locals must raise the 12,919,000.
Right.
And if we do, then the state will give us.
I understand that. I understand that. So this is a summary, but I thought you said earlier that toward the end there's some general where everything's added together, and that would be where you'd ask a question about the budget in general. Is that correct? Or could I ask a question about the budget in general now, or when do I?
Well,
when can I ask?
I think go ahead and ask the question.
Well, I just wondered, how many students, Paul, do we serve in the district today?
3,063.
How many did we serve 5 years ago?
Probably 100 more.
100 more? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and I guess the thing that bothers me is that in general, we serve less students and we pay more every year. And I understand how it works as far as salaries and things like that, but it just seems that we should be more prudent when we look at the total cost in general for our education funding.
Yeah.
That's my comment. And I asked my question, so thank you.
Further discussion? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. Article 13, to see what sum the district will raise and appropriate for the annual payments on debt service previously approved by the district voters for non-state funded school construction projects and non-state funded portions of school construction projects, in addition to the funds appropriated as the local share of the district's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12. School board recommends $17,699, Noble High School auditorium expansion, total raised and district assessments by municipality, Town of Berwick, 38.92%, $6,888. Town of Lebanon, 32%, $5,664. Town of North Berwick, 29.08%, $5,147. Explanation. Non-state funded debt service is the amount of money needed for the annual payments on the district's long-term debt for major capital school construction projects that are not approved for state subsidy. The bonding of this long-term debt was previously approved by the district voters. Open for discussion. Up and back.
There's no increase in any of this year, right? This is a set payment established to be paid every year until the mortgage is paid off or whatever it was.
That's correct. When we built this facility, the state only allowed us a 600-seat auditorium, and the feeling at the time was we wanted a larger auditorium. So this represents the payment for the slightly larger expansion. This is actually 1,000.
But this is the same payment that we make every year?
It's actually slightly less than, because it depreciates. Each year it goes down a little bit. It's actually slightly less than this year.
Okay, and when will that be paid off? Does anybody know that right now?
At the same time that the high school's paid off.
Which is?
It's a 20-year bond, and we open in 2001, 2021.
Thank you.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? Article passes. Article 14. Now, before we start on the article, this is a written ballot article. And once we get into the discussion phase, then we'll be looking for an amendment to reflect what we passed, I think it was $7,000 back on, what article, Sue, was that?
Oh, gosh, Article 3?
It was a special ed one.
Article 2?
Article 2.
Article 2.
Article 2. So anyway, we'll move the article, second it, we'll have our discussion. Hopefully we'll get an amendment and pass it, and then once that is finished, we will then go to the town ballot clerks for a written ballot vote. The ballot clerks will then tabulate, turn the numbers into Susan, and then we'll announce the results. Article 14, written ballot required, to see what sum the district will raise and appropriate in additional local funds. Recommend $3,277,974, which exceeds the state essential programs and services allocation model by recommended $2,968,267 as required to fund the budget recommended by the school board. The school board recommends $3,277,974 for additional local funds and gives the following reasons for exceeding the state's essential programs and services funding model by $2,968,267. There are a number of reasons why this budget exceeds our EPS limit. Some are curriculum decisions that the Board of Directors has made and our communities have supported, such as full-time nurses and guidance counselors in each school and reasonable class sizes. Fundamentally, however, the primary reason is that the EPS formula does not fully recognize all of the costs necessary to maintain school programs and services. Explanation. The additional local funds are those locally raised funds over and above the district's local contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, and local amounts raised for the annual payment on non-state funded debt service that will help achieve the district budget for educational programs. Open for discussion. Mark?
I'd like to amend the article by a total of $7,000 to reflect the change in Article 2.
Do we have a second to the amendment? It's been moved and seconded to amend this article upwards, total of $7,000. Open for discussion. No discussion. I'll call for the vote on the amendment. Those in favor of the $7,000 amendment, please signify. Opposed? The amendment passes. Now we're in discussion of the amended article. Further discussion. If there's no more discussion, then I am going to call for the written ballot with the ballot clerks. So you can we're not going to adjourn, we'll keep the meeting going, but you can now just orderly come to your ballot clerks, get your ballot and vote, and ballot clerks, report your results to Susan at the end.
No, I mean, he would resign that.
You can't serve for 2 years.
So you've got that amended figure, whatever it is, 30. Okay, great. I wonder how that got confused. 16 and 17. said, okay, Paul, this is the official ballot, right? And so when I met with Stockmeyer, I said, okay, this is the official ballot, right?
So I wonder how that happened. If maybe it's in Ellen's, if she pulled up
Oh.
the 10 versus the 11 versus the 12, just it's worked off of that. Just put it in that
Yeah,
order.
well, it's 16 and 17.
Right. So I just wonder if she
No, this is right, 16 and 17. Is that, what is that? Is that adult debt?
This is the outs. No, this is the outs.
Okay, so the numbers.
They're reversed. Oh, how do we get her number? Sorry, ladies. No, I know. I know. I didn't know. Okay, so yeah. No, that's not your fault. How about it? I never called. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, this is the official warrant. So we don't have to do anything. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it was. I don't think it was last year. A couple of years ago. Because I'm up there reading the thing in politics. It's not the article.
I know.
It is the article, but this is the official ballot.
So I got my 11.
No, only one written ballot. Yeah. Unless the only way we get a written ballot is 10% force of the right. Now, Paul, do you want to speak to the crowd before we adjourn, or? Yeah, that's right, yeah. All right, so I'll turn it over to you, and then I'll call for a motion to adjourn. All right?
All right, so our total was 91 votes, 80 in favor, and 11 against. Yeah, total is 91 was called, 80 in.
May I have your attention, please? We have the official results of the vote. There were 91 ballots cast, 80 yes, 11 no. Article passes. Amended article passes. Article 15 summarizes the proposed school budget. Article 15, to see what sum the district will authorize the school board to expend for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2012 and ending June 30th, 2013 from the district's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, non-state funded school construction projects, additional local funds for school purposes under the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20-A, Section 15,690, unexpended balances, tuition receipts, state subsidy, and other receipts for the support of schools. School Board recommends $34,825,603. Open for discussion. Mark?
I would like to amend this upwards $7,000 to reflect the previous articles.
Moved and seconded to amend this article upwards $7,000. We're in discussion on the amendment. There's no discussion. Those in favor of the amendment, please signify. Opposed? The amendment passes. Now we move to the amended article. Open for discussion. If no discussion, I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor of the amended article, please signify. Opposed? The amended article passes. Now remember, this is the official warrant. I know what you have maybe in your hands is backwards or has a wrong number on it, but this is Article 16. In addition to the amounts approved in the preceding articles, shall the school board be authorized to expend such other sums as may be received from federal or state grants or programs or other sources during the fiscal year for school purposes, provided that such grants, programs, or other sources do not require the expenditure of other funds not previously appropriated. Moved and seconded. Open for discussion. I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? Article passes. This is Article 17 now, the adult education article. Article 17, to see if Maine School Administrative District Number 60 will appropriate $284,733 for adult education and raise $196,583 as the local share, with authorization to expend any additional incidental or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the adult education program. Open for discussion. Up and back, this gentleman in the back there.
Is there any increase this year in this budget, or is
Paul?
Is this the same budget as last year, or?
No, there is a slight increase.
And how much do you think that is?
Actually, our adult ed director is here. She probably could answer that faster than I can find my budget.
Here, I have a mic behind you. It's $16,683.
Further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor, please signify. Opposed? The article passes. I'm going to turn the mic over to the superintendent of schools, Paul Andrade, and then it'll come back to me, and we'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that this is just the first step in a two-step process, that now the budget that you've approved will go to a referendum vote on the 22nd. The polls will be open from 8 to 8, so please come out again and have your friends do that. I appreciate your support of the district budget and of our kids. And on a personal note, this is my last budget meeting, so I just want to thank you for your support for the 35 years that I've been here. Thank you very much.
So before we dismiss, is there anything else that we've got to say? Okay. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Open for discussion. If there are no discussion, those in favor, please signify. Opposed? We are adjourned.